Bill Cassidy. Good morning.
Hey, Rob. Hey, Bernie. How are y'all?
Well, we are doing fine on this Friday morning. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good. I mean, Washington's a mess. Donald Trump might be our next president. It's an interesting time to live.
If you want to call it interesting. I have other words for it, but interesting. We'll go with that one.
It's hugely interesting. It's hugely interesting.
Yes, it's huge.
So this new bill, reading a little bit about it, really tries to tackle the problems with mental health and the way the government supports, helps, treats those who are suffering from certain illnesses. Can you talk about that?
So there's research that shows most folks have their first major mental illness episode, their first psychotic break, sometime between the ages of 15 and 30. Wow. There's research that shows that if you go in and that person, she has her first break at age 24, and you wrap around her all the services that she needs to return to wholeness, that will be her first psychotic break. It will be her last psychotic break.
Wow.
And that she will continue on in life. And believe me, she'll struggle. But her life can be whole, her marriage, her children, all can be relatively unaffected. We don't do that now. Right now, if someone has that psychotic break, they're more likely to end up in this cycle where they continue to spiral downward. And again, I hate to say it, but you see what happens in the Lafayette movie theater when someone enters that spiral, and it goes on so long that they lose touch with reality.
All right. Having spent so many years as a doctor, and looking at patients, caring for them in the ways that you still do, but the mental health side, there's still such a stigma. Wouldn't you agree?
There's a stigma. But, I'm old enough to remember when people wouldn't tell others they had cancer.
Yeah.
Now you're at a dinner table, someone brings up their rectal cancer.
Yeah, I know, right?
So let me tell you about my cancer. So we need to get to the point where, we once was war with cancer. Well, I don't tell anybody I have cancer. It's a moral disease. And just be upfront about it. I mean, listen. And you see some of the folks in Hollywood doing that. I think Michael Douglas's wife has done that, and a couple others. And the key thing is, of course, that they had an episode. They're now, if you will, being treated well, and so they never have another episode. Once we have that, there'll be less stigma about it.
And I think on the topic of stigma, too, I've heard some people maybe think that they need to see someone or might even have something like anxiety, but don't want that tag for the rest of their life in their medical history that there is a history of anxiety. I think that goes along with the stigma. So how much of this is government and the way that funding and resources are placed, and how much of it just culture?
Companies, yeah.
Well, you can't separate the two. On the other hand, we're not talking about anxiety per se, even though that's important. We're talking about major mental illness, schizophrenia, bipolar disease, schizoaffective disorder. And it's interesting because, going to your point how there's a stigma, almost everybody listening right now either has a friend or has somebody that in their family who had a major mental illness, perhaps committed suicide, or perhaps their marriage broke up and the person just kind of drifted off. I remember a beautiful woman I went to high school with, and then I saw her later as a patient, and she was always different. When I saw her later as a patient, I realized that she had mental illness as a teenager. No one knew how to address it. And so when I saw her later, her life was predictable. And so we can address that. What's worse? Having your life totally fall apart, your marriage fall apart, your children terribly affected, or having to ask for help? We need to make it easier to ask for help, and then once asked for help, you make it really effective help.
Wow. It's just a whole different way of thinking about it.
It
And
is.
I just like you said, this isn't how we handle it right now. So what's the step? Where are we in the process for the bill? We know about it. We're reading about it. What's the next step for it to get closer to becoming law?
I think we're going to hear it in a couple of weeks. We'll have a hearing on it. And the House is working on it. This is bipartisan. Nothing's going to happen unless it's bipartisan. And it's both the House and the Senate working on it. The President has indicated support. And so we've worked hard to get it. Is it perfect? No. Is it where I would like it to entirely be? No. On the other hand, it's going to pass. I think it's going to pass. And right now, where the federal government spends $500 million in a department that doesn't have a psychiatrist.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
The department responsible for this does not have a psychiatrist on staff. We're actually going to have a psychiatrist helping us sign off as to what the priority should be. And we'll begin to focus those dollars, creating more people to help treat mental health, but hopefully better programs that those people who are trained will have to use to treat those with mental health issues.
Now, before we let you go, I want to ask you real quick, because the U.S. Attorney General, Senator Cassidy, Loretta Lynch, was on the Late Show with Stephen Colbert last night. And she was talking about the Apple case and how, the court order to open up the San Bernardino, one of the shooters, the phone. And, she said, look, we're not trying to spy on all iPhone users. This is kind of a tough case because we sure need that information. At the same time, people worry it's kind of a slippery slope.
We are at war with ISIS, which is seeking weapons of mass destruction, which is trying to stimulate terror within our country. Now, let me repeat that. They're seeking weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah.
They are trying to get the chemical weapons that Syria has and nuclear weapons wherever they can in order to attack Western civilization. It might be a slippery slope. I don't think it is. I think you can truncate it and you say, listen, if it is somebody involved with a domestic terror or foreign terrorist group, then we are going to have it. But otherwise, period, no, not. But keep in mind, they are seeking weapons of mass destruction. We are at war. And we're at war just as we were in World War II, Vietnam, Korea, you name it. So the communications that the other side has, right now we can't have access to. Mm-hmm. And they might be plotting another terror attack where somebody goes and shoots 10 coworkers. I'm all for getting those records.
Well, and I can certainly understand that. It's not like they're going to target everybody. They want one specific phone, and
yeah.
I just
and by the way, if it turns out that they are connected to a cell leader, someone who was directing them what to do, and then that same person is directing someone else to carry out another attack someplace else, well, then probably they'll want to do another phone. But it's all going to be related to this domestic terror, to ISIS, to a war that we're going to be on for the next 30 years. We just need to get used to it.
U.S. Senator Bill Cassidy, thank you so much for taking some time out of your schedule this morning. Really appreciate it. And two very important topics, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me. And everybody stay safe, stay dry.
We will try, sir. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Very interesting insight.
Absolutely.
I think you hit the nail on the head, really, when we started talking about the stigma that comes with mental illness. I think that plays an enormous role in how we treat it, how we accept it. I remember when I was in middle school, mm-hmm. we were learning about cancer and what it was. Mm-hmm. And that was still at the time, even as, how old would you be then? 10, 11 mm-hmm. years old or so, where our teacher said, it's okay to hug someone who has cancer.
Yeah.
Because we had that fear. You hear the word, it's like, is it going to rub off on
mm-hmm.
me? Or, and someone came. It was a woman. I remember it very vividly, the whole thing. A woman who was suffering from breast cancer. She had lost her hair due to treatment. And she talked to us about how she feels and that we could hug her and that she hopes to be well. I don't know where that went from there. It was just kind of that one day in my little mm-hmm. child mind. But taking that away, like you said, people are willing to talk about their struggle, especially with cancer. We have a coworker who's dealing with it with his family right now. And we can talk about it and be that support instead of just being so, you shouldn't let's just not mention it. And that's what I feel like. Feel like is the deal with mental health. You might know someone who's been treated or has had to be admitted maybe to a facility for, mm-hmm. To be monitored and that sort of thing. And I still think it's touchy. If even to the person who's dealt with it, just because it carries that, you had that, and it's unfortunate,
It's almost as if, this is us as a society, that we think that people are less, or we think that they are not as strong, when in reality, you can't control the chemicals in your brain. Mm-hmm. It's like whenever, people who deal with depression, chronic depression, severe depression, I'm not ashamed anymore. I was at one time to say, I used to have to battle depression. But now I'm not afraid to say it, but there's a lot of people who wouldn't feel the way I feel.
It'll be really interesting.
They wouldn't want to talk about it.
Really interesting to see how this bill goes and see what next steps. Hopefully, we will look back one day and say, hey, that was the first time we heard about a law that could go through that changed the way we do this.
Yeah.
Really, really crazy.
Yeah, and hopefully prevent a lot of heartache.
8:25 now at KPEL. Coming up after the break, we'll hear from the president. I'm sorry. We're going to do news first.
Sure.
We have to get some news in first. Maybe tell you about Patty in the Park. After the bottom of the hour news, we have an interview from yesterday's Go Acadiana, the president of LABI, Louisiana Association of Business and Industry. Very interesting insight on the budget talks and where we are right now. We'll be back. Acadiana's Morning News continues after this.